throughout the whole Quran, you'll find countless times the importance and the encouragement of Salah. It's the most fundamental act of worship in our religion. As-salatu imaduddin. It's an absolute pillar of our religion. When Jibreel alayhi salam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and was asking him, Mal iman, mal Islam. Out of Islam, what is it? As-salah first. Yeah, and then afterwards, he actually says, An ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah. That we want to worship Allah in a way that as if we are seeing Allah. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. Even though you can't see Allah, act as if you can. Or if, at the very least, know that Allah is watching you. That sentence there, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah, that you worship Allah as if you're looking at Him, or as if you know that He's watching you, that's the pinnacle of everything. All acts of worship of ours, we want to get to that stage. That's including Salah as well. So today, when we talk about Khushoo and these different things in Salah, that's the purpose, that's what we want. Bismillah. So today we'll do a few things, inshallah. We'll talk about Khushoo, what it is, how to get it. And like I said, because we want to worship Allah in the perfect way, there's a few basic rules of Salah as well. The basic fiqh of Salah. I know it's not a fiqh session today, but there are a few fundamentals that I thought it'd be worthy of mentioning. And then there's a few FAQs as well. Brother Sajid hooked me up with lots of frequently asked questions, so I just threw them all on there, and inshallah I've answered them. But what I want to do, when we do the basic principles, we'll go through the basic rules, and then as we do the FAQs, inshallah we learn the rules, so that later on whenever you have an issue, then we can figure it out ourselves. That's the point. Because if I just have it as a Q&A session, everyone will have a separate question, but we won't learn the fundamentals. And then a different issue will arise in your salah and you still won't know what to do. So the best thing would be have a few core rules, and then we can take these rules out ourselves, inshallah. Then we'll have a practical demonstration at the end, inshallah. I'll make you guys all stand up, inshallah. First things first, niyyah. Why do we do anything? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Why are we doing this today? Why are we sat here? Like I said, we want to worship Allah in the most perfect sense. So how do we gain the maximum benefit from our salah? How do we learn how to perform salah in the most perfect way? And then get khushoo. Again, what khushoo is, we're going to come to it in a few minutes. Couple of virtues. I mentioned this one, everybody knows this one. Alif Lam Mim. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book. There's no doubt in this book. It's a guidance for the pious. It's a guidance for the muttaqeen, those who have consciousness of Allah. So that's what Allah says. Allah wants you to be muttaqeen. A few verses later He says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. These people are successful. And then He describes who they are in between. And the first thing He says is, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. Those who perform their salah. So you establish your salah, you مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, spend from what Allah has given you. Few things about Iman there, and then Allah says, these are the guided people. These are the successful people. And then there's a hadith here, as Umar radiallahu ta'ala, so Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says, that I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saying, إِنَّ الْإِسْلَامَ بُنِيَ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. That this Islam has 5 fundamental pillars. It's founded upon 5 things. Shahadati an la ilaha illallah, the testimony of faith. وإقام الصلاة, establishing salah again. إيتاء الزكاة, صوم Ramadan, and Hajj al-Bayt, performing the Hajj if you are able. It's a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari. Another one about salah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm just going to paraphrase the hadith. It's a hadith of Bukhari, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked if any of you had like a river right in front of his house, and he was to bathe in there 5 times a day. 5 times a day. Would he have any dirt left on his body? So the Sahaba said, of course not. This guy's going to be the cleanest one of us, right? So Rasulullah said, that's what salah does. Salah cleanses you from sins, just like a river would cleanse you from other impurities. So salah, he meant 5 times salah. That's why in another hadith he says, Salawatul Khams, wal Jum'ah ila al-Jum'ah, wa Ramadan ila Ramadan, mukaffiratun lima baynahunna. That the 5 daily prayers, the 5 salah, one Jum'ah to the next, one Ramadan to the next, all these good deeds become an expiation for everything that happens in between. So between Fajr and Dhuhr, the minor sins that we committed, Allah will wash it away by Dhuhr. By Dhuhr, between Dhuhr and Asr, whatever you've done in between, read the Asr Salah, Allah wipes it all away. So 5 Salah are very, very important in the life of a Muslim. I was looking at one clip just earlier today of another scholar, a bit more down south than us, and he was saying that if you were to come to a Jum'ah and you were to ask the person next to you, are you coming next week Jum'ah? He said, what do you think I am? Of course I'm coming Jum'ah, I'm a Muslim. Of course I'm going to come Jum'ah. What type of question is that? But then if you are to ask the same guy, are you coming Asr? Are you coming Maghrib? He'll be like, oh, I don't know, I'm weak. I'm a weak, make dua for me. So what's the difference then between Jum'ah and 5 Salah? They're all farz. They're all something that we must do. So the 5 Salah is like a basic part of being a Muslim. It's not just, we can't just be Jum'ah Muslims. We should be 5 times Salah Muslims every day. And then أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة الصلاة. The first thing that will be taken into account on the day of Qiyamah is Salah. The first thing. You have to present your deeds, and then Allah will say, okay, where's your Salah? Is it all there or not? If it's all there, then you're sorted. The rest of it, إنما هو العرض. In the hadith of Aisha, there'll just be like a glance through. The rest of your deeds, because Salah checked out. All your other deeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will just, yeah, go. There, Jannah, go. Right? But if you fail there on the first hurdle, then مَنْ نُوقِشَ فَقَدْ حَلَكَ. Then you'll be scrutinized, everything. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is scrutinized, he's finished. Because of, why did you look at that? Why did you listen to that? Why did you go there? Why did you not do this? Why did you do this? Everything in your book needs to be questioned. So if you want to avoid that, Salah. And we're coming into it. Let's come into Khushoo. So, Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off, 18th juz, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. These believers, they're successful. Who are they? الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. They are people who have Khushoo in Salah. People who have Khushoo in Salah. At the end of the, Allah has a few descriptions here. One of those is this, those who have Khushoo in Salah. Then Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ. These are the inheritors of Jannatul Firdaus. الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. They'll be in Jannatul Firdaus, they'll live in there forever. So we have to get our Salah up to this level here. هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. On the flip side of that, surah we read all the time, Surah Ma'un, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Allah says, woe and curse on those people who are performers of Salah. Allah is cursing the people of Salah. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Those people that in their Salah, they're still negligent. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Or they only show off. They're performing Salah to show off. Or they're still negligent in terms of their Salah. So we want to be from these people. فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. The people who have Khushoo in their Salah. So what is that? This is Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi. He says, when the heart is fully focused on Allah, it's fully, one thing is being focused on Allah, mixed with humility and being submissive to Allah. Right? So it's, Ibn al-Qayyim says it's like having honor, understanding the greatness of Allah, having the honor of Allah in the heart, understanding that this is the one who created me. This is the one who's created the entire universe. This is the one who sustains me. The azma, the greatness of Allah, as well as submissiveness. This is the one who I must lower myself in front of. Right? A mix of that is Khushoo. So the concept is quite easy. It stumps a lot of people for some reason. I don't know what Khushoo is, what is it? It simply is this. Right? Being submissive to Allah and at the same time having a sense of awe and sense of greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Khushoo. But how to get it? That's the main thing. How do we get this? So, a few points. One is performing wudu at home and then going to the masjid early. A lot of us, what happens is, because we're so busy, we do a quick 1 minute wudu and then we'll rush to the masjid. And this is, I do this as well. We rush to the masjid and then we quickly come and we join the salah. Right? Now what happens is we've not had time to even realize what we're doing. We're still like autopilot mode, straight in, yeah, like this, and that's it. Whatever's happening, we don't even know what's happening. Right? But if we were to do it the other way, you do wudu at home properly, we come early for salah, and then we read our sunnah, or you come in and read Tahiyyatul Masjid. You know, when we come in come inside the masjid, there's a special salah where you welcome the masjid. You greet the masjid. Instead of saying Assalamu alaikum to the masjid, you perform 2 rakat salah. It's called Tahiyyatul Masjid. And we should try and do so whenever it's not a makruh time to perform salah. We'll come in, perform 2 rakat salah. Then your sunnah. So like in Zuhr, read the 4 sunnah before Zuhr. Right? What happens if you do this and we don't talk to anyone? So if we come in and we start talking to everyone, already we've kind of lost that focus. We want to maintain focus. So come in, perform your 2 rakat salah for Tahiyyatul Masjid. You read your 4 rakat salah of sunnah. And then you come for the actual Jama'at prayer, the congregational prayer. You'll definitely see a change. And you'll see an increase in your focus. So wudu at home, so even doing wudu at home, it's like it's a virtue to do that instead of coming to the masjid. Man tatawwa'a fi baytihi, the hadith says. Whoever performs wudu at home. Yeah, we have facilities in the masjid, but that's for emergencies. Man tatawwa'a fi baytihi, thumma kharaja li'ada'i salati al-maktuba. Then he leaves his home to come to the masjid for salah. Then he includes in all these other virtues. So wudu at home is also part of this. Another one, and the du'as of entering the masjid. So as we enter the masjid, we're asking Allah, Allahumma aftahli abwaba rahmatik. Again, it shouldn't just be like, just say the du'as for the sake of saying it. We should think about what it means. We're asking Allah, the doors of your mercy open and wide for me. So if we contemplate on that du'a as well, and then we come into the masjid, already we have that assistance from Allah, so we're already getting focused. And then I mentioned before about the sunnah of Farad Salah. We know 2 before Fajr, 4 before Zuhr, 2 after Zuhr, 4 before Asr, 2 after Maghrib, before Isha, after Isha, before the Farad of Isha. The more we'll pray, the more we'll be able to concentrate, inshallah. This is one that comes a lot, learning the meanings of the surahs. Now, it might be difficult to learn a lot of meanings, but let's say the last 10 surahs of the Quran, from Alam Tara to Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, we all know them because we've learned them since we were young. It would probably take us 5 minutes to read the translation of them. And if you read that translation 2-3 times, you'll pick it up. So if we learn the translations of the surahs, and we come into salah and then the imam's reciting Qul huwallahu ahad wa Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, and we can understand what the imam is saying, automatically you then have more khushoo and more focus in your salah. And this is one, if there's any hufaz over here, I would definitely recommend this. Some scholars say that, for a hafiz, reciting from Juz Amma shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't recite from Juz Amma. It's too easy. You know it too well. So when you're reading it, you're just reading an autopilot. You won't even concentrate on anything. If you read the ones that you don't revise as much, the ones that are a little bit harder, you force yourself to focus. So again, you're bringing khushuu in your salah. So even if, let's say, everyone knows the last 10 surahs very well, but lam yakunil ladhina kafaru, that's a hard one. Yeah, from the maktab days, the madrasa days, lam yakunil ladhina kafaru, that's like the hardest surah. Right? If we force ourselves to lam yakunil ladhina, we'll be alright. We'll be forcing ourselves to focus. So we don't usually read that. So read those, the ones that you don't often read. This is also an important one. In fact, the hadith say that if food is being served at home, you're allowed to eat that food first, even if it's at the time of salah. Eat that food first, then come for salah. The reason is, you don't want to be hungry in salah, because you don't want to be thinking about, what am I going to eat at home? What's cooking at home during your salah? Everything that we should have done before, do it before. Eat before, go to the toilet before if you need to. Any distraction, get it out of the way. And then come for salah, so you can focus on your salah. And identify the reasons that distract you from salah. So if it's noise, for example, if I'm in a place that's always noisy, let me remove myself from there. Come into a place that's very silent, very tranquil, very peaceful, I can perform my salah over there. And wearing the sunnah clothing. When we come for Eid Salah, for example, everyone wears the best clothes. When we say best clothes, we mean sunnah clothing. So we come for Eid Salah, everyone comes up in their thobe, in their jabba. We should try and do that every Salah. Every Salah we should try and come with our sunnah attire, try and wear your hat, try and wear your jabba, your thobe, put some perfume on as well. You know the angels, they're very, you could say, sensitive, a very sensitive creation of Allah. So small things will harm the angels, not harm them, but put them off. So for example, the hadith says that when you lie, the angels go a mile away from that person because of the stench that comes out of his mouth. So lying is a stench that we can't say, but they can feel that. Even when a person comes, that's what Rasulullah said, فَاسْتَحْيُوهُمْ وَكْرِمُوهُمْ. You know when we come out of, let's say when you have a bath and a ghusl at home, the Prophet ﷺ has advised that get dressed as soon as possible. Because the angels of mercy, they remove themselves from you when you're not clothed. Because they have that level of haya as well. So the Prophet ﷺ said, have honor for them, respect them, get dressed as soon as possible. And when we come to the masjid, bad smells. That's why the Prophet said, Man akala hadha shum, when he talked about onions, whoever's eaten from this, فَلَا تَقْرُبَنَّ مُصَلَّانَا. Don't come to our masjid then, until you've brushed your teeth and washed your mouth. Because that smell, it will put off the angels. It'll put off the guy next to you, but it'll put off the angels as well. Same goes with smoking. So if we have clean sunnah clothing, we've made sure we put some perfume on, we've brushed our teeth, all of these things lead up to Khushoo in Salah. Understand that I'm facing my Creator right now. I'm going to stand before Allah right now. Another one offering, again the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Salli salatul waddi'in. Read your Salah as if it's the last one you'd ever read. There was this one Sahabi who had been captured by the kuffar, and he was going to be put to death. And they said, any last requests? He said, let me read 2 rakat salah. Let me just read 2 rakat salah. My dying wish is to read 2 rakat salah. So he started performing his salah, but he cut it quick, he cut it short. And he said, the only reason I'm cutting my salah short is because I don't want you lot to think that I'm prolonging my salah because I'm scared of you. I'm not shortening it because, I would have done it longer because of the love that I have for salah. But you lot might think I'm scared of you, so I'm just trying to delay it. That's not the case. But imagine it was your last salah. Imagine how his salah would have been. How his salah was. Knowing that it's the last one he's ever going to read. The last thing he's ever going to do. So the Prophet said, read your salah as if you're never going to perform it again. If we have this in our mind as well, it all leads to Khushoo. And this is probably the most important thing. And like I said at the beginning, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. That we worship Allah as if we're seeing Him. If we have this in our mind all the time, that I'm standing in front of my Allah, I'm presenting myself in front of my Creator, I must stand in such a way that is humble. I shouldn't be looking around. The other verse we recited, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. It was revealed because at the beginning, when the Sahaba used to read Salah, they used to look around. They used to look around in Salah. So this verse was revealed. That these people are successful who have Khushoo in their Salah. They look down. They look down in their Salah. وَخَشَعَتِ الْأَصْوَاتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ. And on the day of Qiyamah, when Allah describes it, it says, خَشَعَتِ الْأَصْوَاتُ. That voices will be humbled and voices will be lowered in front of Ar-Rahman, in front of Allah. Because they're standing in front of Allah. My Shaykh Mawlana Yusuf Mutala rahmatullahi alayhi, he says, Dhuhr Salah, why is it a quiet Salah? Why is it quiet? We have some Fajr, Maghrib, Isha are performed loudly with the Imam. Dhuhr, Asr, they're silent. Why? He says one of the reasons is you're supposed to imagine how it will be on Qiyamah. Because on the day of Qiyamah, it'll be very hot. The sun will be a mile above your heads. And everybody standing in rows. The Quran says everybody will be standing in rows. In the end of Surah Naba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this. That everyone will be lined up in rows. Nobody will speak except for who Allah gives permission, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in Dhuhr, it's the hottest part of the day. I know in England we don't get much, but generally it's the hottest part of the day. It's midday. Imagine this heat. And we didn't have AC those days as well. So imagine standing in Masjid al-Nabawi, for example, You're standing in Masjid al-Nabawi, midday, it's really hot, the ceilings were very low. The ceilings were very low in Masjid al-Nabawi. That's why you know when the ruling of ghusl on Jum'ah, of having a shower on Jum'ah, it came about because Masjid al-Nabawi was small. Ceilings were low, middle of the day, and Sahaba used to come from work, used to get a bit smelly. So the Prophet ﷺ said, have ghusl on Jum'ah. Make sure you come Jum'ah after having a shower. Right? So, if we imagine, it's the day of Qiyamah. So in Salah, you stand there, it's silent. Imagine, this is Qiyamah. How would we be standing in front of Allah, looking down, not a word, and the heat is blazing down on you. Imagine that scene of Qiyamah. That will be enough for you in Dhuhr and Asr. Just imagine the scenes. That itself is enough to give you Khushoo of Salah. Now having said all of that, those are just some points. This is the most important. If you can't concentrate, you can't concentrate. Doesn't mean you don't perform Salah. We perform Salah regardless. It might be our test that some people say, I read Salah but I don't feel anything. Who guaranteed that you're going to feel something every Salah? Maybe that's your test, that despite the fact that you don't feel something, you're still obedient to Allah. Allah says, read Salah. Allah says, read Salah 5 times, I want it. And you say, okay, I'm doing it. No matter what happens, I'm doing my 5 Salah. So when no one's perfect, there will be times that we can't concentrate, but we still perform Salah. That's Khushoo. Finished. Has anyone got any questions about Khushoo? So if you're in your own Salah, you need to read just as loud that you can hear yourself. So just a whisper. It must be verbal though. It can't be something, because a lot of my students ask, what if you read it in your head? That's not reading, that's thinking. Right? If you're reading, if it's all in your brain, that's thinking. You have to read it. So as long as you read it loud enough that you can hear yourself, just a whisper, that's enough. And in terms of the speed, as long as you're adhering to the rules of tajweed, then if you're very slow, that's fine. If you're a little bit quicker, that's fine as well. There's a bit of leeway there about how fast you want to go, but the rules of tajweed must be implemented. That's a must. You can't miss out, especially when it comes to like letters, mispronouncing letters and things. That can become a major mistake in your salah, and it could break your salah as well, depending on how bad the mistake was. So, yes, you don't want to read so loud that you're going to disturb others. Just a slight whisper is fine. According to the Hanafi school, the Hanafi Imams, when you're reading behind the Imam, you don't read anything, because it's qira'atul Imam, qira'atul Ma'mum as well. So the recitation of the Imam is sufficient for the people behind him as well. Other Imams differ on that. So because we have such a diverse community here, you will have some people performing, reciting their Surah Fatiha as well, and that's fine. 2 key words, farad, that we're going to need today. Farad is something that's obligatory, something that you must do, and you have a word called wajib. In terms of action, they're both the same. You must do farad acts, and you must do wajib acts as well. There's a slight difference of what happens if you miss a farad and what happens if you miss a wajib. That's the only difference. In terms of action, farad is the same as wajib. You must do a farad, you must do a wajib. It's just a technical difference. It's a technical difference. Something that's farad will be something, when you ask the scholars, okay, this is a ruling found clearly in the Quran. Because it's so clear in the Quran, we're going to term it farad. And something that's wajib is something very clear in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. They're both the same in terms of action. We have to do farad, we have to do wajib. But there's a slight difference of what to do, or how you can compensate if you miss one or the other. That's the only difference here. So, fara'id before salah. We'll run through this quickly because we know this. Right? You must have wudu if necessary. You can't perform salah without wudu. If we're in a state of major ritual impurity, you'd have to have a ghusl, a shower as well. Your body must be clean. Can't be any najasa on your body. There can't be any najasa on your clothes, and there can't be najasa in the place that you're reading. So your body, your clothes, the place has to all be clean. You can't perform salah obviously in a place of impurity. You must be facing the qibla, as we know. You got to pray at the right time. You got to make the right intention. Like if I was standing up today and I had thought it was asr salah instead, and I had performed 4 rakat, but I thought it was asr, that would have rendered it invalid, because it's not asr time, and my intention is wrong. My intention should have been for dhuhr. So you have to have the right intention, you have to know what you're doing. And you have to be doing it at the right time. That's a mistake, right? We're going to come to that in a few slides, inshallah. Yeah. And finally, covering the awrah. The awrah is the private part of your body that must always be covered. For a man, that's between the navel, so just under your belly button, till below your knees. So everything in between that is your awrah. So that has to be covered at all times, except from your wife. That's it. Everyone else, your own mother, your own father, your brother, sister, they can't see any of that in between. Unless there's like a medical emergency and you have to show it to a doctor. That's different. Right? So if any of that was exposed, your salah wouldn't be valid. So let's say you got shorts on, and there's shorts that come up to above the knees. You can't perform salah in that. You shouldn't be wearing that anyway. You should wear at least those 3/4 ones that cover the knee. But if you weren't wearing it and it was above the knee, your salah would not be valid, it wouldn't be counted. So these are things before salah. We all know these, let's move on. These are the conditions inside salah. Again, farad acts, they must be done in salah. The first thing is takbir tahrima. Now you'd find many of us, I think too many of us make this mistake. They come for salah and they'll do this. But they didn't say anything. You've not said takbir. You've not said Allahu Akbar. The first Allahu Akbar is a farad part of salah. If you didn't say it, you've not started your salah. You're just doing actions. But that's not a salah. You must say Allahu Akbar. And that's called takbir tahrim. It's called takbir tahrim because that's the takbir, that's the Allahu Akbar, that makes everything haram. It makes speaking haram, it makes eating haram. Whilst you're in that salah, you can't speak, you can't eat, you can't do anything else. So it's takbir tahrima, that's an integral part of salah, it's a farad. Then you have qiyam, which is the standing position, to stand in salah, unless obviously you're not physically able to do it. But that's another case, that's a different case. So takbir tahrim, standing position, then qira'ah, which means to recite some Quran, to recite something from the Quran. Then ruku', the bowing position, and then both the sajdas in each rak'ah are farad as well. And then qa'da akhira. So let's say in a 4 rak'ah salah, after every 2 we sit down for tashahhud. The last sitting, the last one. So in a 4 rak'ah salah, the 4th rak'ah, when we sit down. In a 2 rak'ah salah, the first one is the last one. So that's qa'da akhira. That's farad. If you missed it, you can have a problem. Okay, because that's farad, you must do it. So if somebody, actually I'll get to it, I can see you're confused. I'm going to explain it in a second. Qada akhira, the last sitting, just bear that in mind. Those are the farad. We have to know this. So when we do the FAQs, I'm going to be asking you guys. So wajibat in salah. These are wajibs. Again, they must be done, but there's just a technical difference between them that I'll get to in a second. One is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. From the farad, one of them was qira'ah, reciting some Quran. Now it's wajib though, to recite Surah Fatiha in particular. You must read Surah Fatiha. And then after that you have to read a surah as well. And it must be done in that order. So if somebody just read, let's say they started Salah, and they said, Allahu Akbar, Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. Right? Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. He's done his farad, because he read some qira'ah. But he's missed the wajib, because he had to start with Surah Al-Fatiha, and then he had to do his surah. So that order of Fatiha and then the surah is a wajib, it's necessary, you must do that. Okay. So that's Surah Fatiha, then after to recite 3 verses, a bit of Quran after that. So at least 3 short verses or 1 long verse, that would be enough. So let's say you read Ayatul Kursi, for example. That's counted as a long verse, that would be enough. It's only 1, but that would be enough after Surah Fatiha. Then number 3, like I said, Surah Fatiha before the recitation of the surah. So Alhamdu first, and then Qul Wallahu Ahad or whatever else you want to read. Then reciting Surah Fatiha and the extra, those 3 verses, in the 2 rak'ah of Farad Salah. So in a Farad Salah, like we just read in Zuhr, there's a 4 rak'ah Salah. The first 2 are for Surah Fatiha and a surah. Surah Fatiha and a surah. Then the last 2 is only Surah Fatiha. It's only Surah Fatiha. You don't have to read a surah in that. Right? So in Farad Salah, it's only the first 2 rak'at that you have to read a surah with it. That's what it's trying to say here. Then pausing in each position of salah. Every position you must do, you must pause in that position before you move on to the next. So let's say after ruku, you're bowing position, then you stand up. If you were to not stand up straight and quickly jump into sajda, you've missed a part of your salah. So you've not done this ta'dil al-arkan. You've not done the pausing of each position. This is a wajib, you must do this. Again, what I tell all of you to do, the next salah, not after Maghrib, if you're here for Maghrib, after you've done your sunnah, just sit down for 1 minute and observe people that are performing salah. I guarantee you'll find someone not doing this. I can guarantee it. You'll find someone who's not doing ta'dil al-arkan. You'll have to observe for 30 seconds and you'll find someone. Right? But it's a wajib, you must do this in salah. Qawma, standing up after ruku. Between ruku and sajda, when you stand up and say Rabbana lakal hamd, during that position is called qawma. Right? Then you've got jalsa, between the two sajdas, when you sit down for a short pause, that's also a wajib. Then, if you remember, in the sittings, the last sitting was fard. The first sitting is wajib, the first qa'dah. So the first time you read at-tahiyyat, that's wajib. The second time, or the last one, that's the farad part. And then reading at-tahiyyat as well. At-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawat. Reading it. So sitting there in that position is wajib, and reading it is wajib too. So it's something that you must know. So we must learn, attempt to learn. And then afterwards, ending salah with salam. At least saying assalamu alaikum, that's also wajib. Those are the wajibat in salah. A couple of extras that we already know, that in Zuhr Asr, Imam reads quietly. Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, he reads loudly. That's wajib as well. So if the Imam, for example, was in Zuhr, and the Imam started reading loudly, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, then he's made a mistake. He's messed up a wajib. And likewise in Maghrib, if he didn't, and he read it quietly, he's messed up, he doesn't have to do something for a mistake. Likewise in Witr, Qunut, as wajib as well. And in each salah, saying Allahu Akbar extra times, that's wajib too. So those are for specific salah, so we'll leave that. Why is it important? So I've just told you farad, I've just told you wajibs. Why do we need to know the two? And how does it affect us? It affects us in this way. If you miss a farad act, your whole salah is invalid. You must do it again. So let's go back to the farads. These are the farad. If you missed one of these, if you missed one, you'd have to do your whole salah again. So let's say someone didn't do takbir tahrima. His salah is not valid. He'll have to read it again. Say he didn't do, out of the sajdas, he only did one sajda. He'll have to do his salah again. Right? And unless he did it within the same salah. If he realized, oh, I've messed up, let me do it now. Even with a bit of a delay, he's still done it at least. If you missed it completely, you've got to do the whole salah again. The farad will apply for both. So let's say you're following the imam, but you still just refused to do the sajdas, for example, or you just refused to do so I'm not going to ruku, I'm standing. If you missed the ruku, you've missed the farad part of your salah. In fact, your salah would actually break because you've not followed the imam. It's wajib to follow the imam. You must follow the imam. According to the Hanafis, when the imam's reading, you don't read anything. Your job is to just stand there and have khushoo. Literally just stand there and concentrate. You don't have to read anything. No surah Fatiha, no surah about when you would read it. If you come late, you read Salah normally. If you're late, it depends. But there's a specific slide I've prepared about it. Yeah. So what you would do is you would do sajda sahw instead. I'm going to come to it in a second. Because you did the farad, right? You did it, you just did it late. But anyway, like I said, why is this stuff important? Why? Because the farad, like I said, would render your salah invalid if you missed it. With a wajib, if you missed it or delayed it by accident, right, you can compensate for it. You don't have to repeat the whole salah. There's a little thing you can do and it will make it all okay. That little thing is called sajdatul sahw, which is at the end of salah, doing 2 extra sajdas. So you come to the end of your salah, after your at-tahiyyat, after ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, you say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah once, then you do 2 extra sajdas. Those 2 extra sajdas will compensate for any wajib that you missed by accident. So any of these things here, any of these, if you miss them by accident, or you delayed them, then you can compensate for it at the end of Salah. So that's the difference between Farad and Wajib. So Farad, if you missed it, what would you have to do? Repeat your Salah. With a Wajib, you missed it by accident, at the end of Salah, do Sajdatul Sahw. So when we read behind the Imam, it's the Alhamdu and the Surah that you don't read. All the tasbihs, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, all the in-between stuff, you read that. Yeah, so what happens is let's say you join the Imam at the beginning, with the Imam, you join the Imam for the whole Salah. And now the Imam makes a mistake, he does his Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah once, you'll follow him. And then when he says Allahu Akbar, you'll follow him there too. So you'll follow him in everything that he does. If you made another mistake of forgetting, like I've done this as well, you make a mistake, and then you forget that you make the mistake, so then you read all the way up to Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi, then still doesn't matter. Do one salam, and salam. Just one is enough for you. Okay, so like I said, wajib, if you miss or delay a wajib act mistakenly by accident. If you did it on purpose, you have to do your salah again. Because wajib is something that you must do. So if you missed it on purpose, because you forget that I'm not doing it, can't bother today, that's not acceptable, you have to read your salah again. Okay, now we come to the FAQs. There's a few of them, I'll try and get through them in like 10-15 minutes inshallah. If you forget your dua qunut, you should have learnt it. But let's say somebody forgets. Okay, if you forget, you can read another dua in its place. For example, رَبَّنَا أَتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً. You can read that if you want. You could say a shorter dua if you know it, but you must say some sort of a dua, even if it's a small one. The word qunut, it means dua. The word qunut, it means dua. So as long as you've said some dua, like an easy one, like رَبَّنَا أَتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيا حَسَنَةً, or something like that, that will suffice you. Though learning the actual qunut is very important, you should try and do it. There should be an ongoing effort to learn it. So, this was the question that already came up. After you joined the salah, right, so the Imam started the salah, and you came a little bit late, so the Imam's already started. Do you read Thana, which is Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika? Do you read Surah Fatiha? Or do you just say Allahu Akbar and remain silent, right, with the Imam? So Thana is a sunnah act. Reciting Thana, the Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, is sunnah in salah, right? So if you join the Imam in the first rakat, you haven't missed a rakat, you just joined a bit late. So the Imam started, then you walked in, took you 30 seconds to walk, so you're a little bit late, Imam started Surah Fatiha already. Then what you do, if he started Surah Fatiha, then don't read it. Remember, our job now is to just listen to the Quran. إِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. When the Quran is being recited, then remain silent and listen. That's what the Quran says. فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. Listen to it, be quiet. So if you joined late and the Imam has started Alhamdulillah, you just say Allahu Akbar and listen. Okay? However, if it was a silent salah, like Dhuhr or Asr, then if you want to, you can read it. But you don't have to. Why don't you have to? Can anyone answer me why you don't have to? One reason, because you're following the Imam. What else? It's a sunnah. It's not a farad, it's not a wajib. So it's not compulsory. Right? And you're following the Imam. If you join the salah just a bit late, right? Then if it's a silent salah, you can read it if you want. If he's already started the qira'ah, you just stay silent. If you've missed a complete rakat, you will read your thana when you stand up at the end. Because you missed a full rakat. So when the Imam finishes, you're going to stand up to do what you missed. Now that's when you read your thana and a'udhu and bismillah and alhamdu and so on. Because now you're reading by yourself. The way to think of it is this. When you're reading behind the Imam has the stronger position. And everybody behind him is in a weaker position. The people in the weaker position will not affect the Imam. And the Imam's position will sort you all out. So whatever the Imam's doing, as long as his salah is fine, your salah is fine and valid. If your salah's got a few defects in there, your Imam's salah will come out. If you forget to recite Thana, there's no sajda sahwa because it's not wajib. Right? And like I said, Fatiha, as the Hanafis know Surah Fatiha. If you join the salah, Imam's already in ruku. Should you say Allahu Akbar, cross your hands, and then go into ruku? Or should you just do Allahu Akbar, drop it to your side, and go into ruku? So this is a rule that you should remember. We only cross the hands when there's Quran to be recited. So that's why you'd see after ruku, Do we fold our hands or do we keep them to the side? We keep them to the side. Why? Because there's nothing to be recited. It's only Rabbana lakal hamd, that's it. Right? So even in this case, you're going to join the Imam in ruku. You've got nothing to read. So you will say Allahu Akbar, so drop your hand to the side, and then join the Imam in ruku. What's important though is remember, the qiyam position, what is it? Qiyam position is fard, right? So when you start your salah, you must pause in the standing position, at least for a second. Right? Then you will say Allahu Akbar and join for ruku. So you must say Allahu Akbar, right? You must stand there for us, pause for a little bit, then you can go into ruku. Because you must do the qiyam position. Because it's fard. I hope I'm making sense. Yeah? If somebody crossed their arms, it's not an invalidation of the salah or anything. But the best thing is to do Allahu Akbar and drop it to your side. If somebody was to cross it, it's not problem. So that if the Imam breaks his salah, everyone's is broken. Unless, there's one thing he can do is somebody from behind, he can put them in his place. So if the Imam can take somebody from behind, put them in his place, and that person will continue the salah. If he doesn't do that, then everyone's is invalidated. That's why it's important that the people that stand behind the Imam know what's going on. And they know the rules of salah. So yeah, if the Imam's in ruku or sajda, say Allahu Akbar, then without folding the hands, you just go into that position, ruku or sajda, wherever the Imam is. Yeah, make sure you pause in qiyam. When joining salah at ruku and the Imam is about to get back to qiyam, do you miss the first rak'ah? So this was, I think the uncle here was asking, once the Imam has left the ruku position, you've missed the rak'ah. Right? If you were to join the salah and you came into that position, as long as the Imam was still in ruku, you've got it. Even if you couldn't read Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. As long as you got the position, that's fine. However, what's important to remember is, let's say you got into ruku. The Imam was already up from ruku, but he said Sami Allahu liman hamidah later. Let's say for example the Imam did this. So he's in ruku, and the Imam does this. Sami Allahu liman hamidah. He's already out from ruku. So if you had joined as soon as he left from ruku, your rak'at's missed. Luckily here in this masjid, your imams say Sami Allahu liman hamidah at the same time as they leave from ruku, because they know this rule. Okay? Yes. But just something to think about if you're in somewhere else. If you join the salah and Imam's in tashahhud, as you join the Imam gets up, do you say tashahhud or do you get up? So this is, I think someone asked this as well. Let's say you join the Imam and you sat down, right? So the Imam's in the second rak'ah, he's in tashahhud, he's doing tahiyyat, and you sit down as well. Then the Imam gets up for his third rak'ah, but you're not done. You're still halfway through at-tahiyyat. Now there's two things here. One is your at-tahiyyat is wajib. Following the Imam is wajib too. So one is at-tahiyyat is wajib. You also have to follow the Imam. So what do you give preference to? Because they're both wajib. So what you would do in this case is finish your at-tahiyyat. Because if you finish your at-tahiyyat, you can still catch the Imam in his position, just a little bit late. So in that way you get the best of both. You've done your wajib of tashahhud and you follow the Imam just slightly later. Yeah? However, if somebody just stood up with the Imam, that's fine. Remember what we said before? The Imam's position, it sorts you guys out, right? For these small kind of mistakes. So, if the Imam stands up for the third, and you haven't finished tashahhud yet, you can finish it. Why? Because tashahhud is wajib and following the Imam is wajib. By reading it, there's only a delay in following the Imam. So you still did the wajib of following the Imam, just a little bit later. So you still did both of the wajibs. But if someone just stood up and followed the Imam, that's fine as well. If he stood up straight away, it's probably best to just stand up with him. Yeah? Good that you brought that up actually. What we see a lot happens is that if somebody walks in late and the Imam's in sajda or tashahhud, people just stand there. And then they'll only start the salah when the Imam gets back up again. But we should join straight away. Because every second with the Imam has immense reward. So even though he's in sajda, and you're like, oh, I'll have to go all the way down, then I have to get all the way out, back up again. But we should do it anyway. Because just that extra bit with the Imam is worth it. When the Imam says salam to the right and the left, and I've not finished my tashahhud, or my Allahumma salli, or Allahumma inni dhalamtu, do I complete it and then do my salam, or do I just follow the Imam? So it's the same thing as the previous slide. If you're doing your at-tahiyyat, right? Remember, you need to finish the salah with the Imam, but you also need to do your tashahhud. So you can do your tashahhud if you want, and then you can finish. But you wouldn't complete your Allahumma salli ala Muhammad or Allahumma inni dhalamtu if you've not done that yet. Anybody know why? It's sunnah. It's sunnah. So you're not going to delay the wajib because of the sunnah. So when you're sitting at the end, you read three things. Read at-tahiyyat, read Allahumma salli, Allahumma inni dhalamtu. Right? The at-tahiyyat is wajib. It must be done. Allahumma salli, Allahumma inni dhalamtu are sunnah acts. Right? So if the Imam's finished and you still want to read your at-tahiyyat, you can do that. But you wouldn't delay your salam for these two things. Right? You would just end your salam. References are there if anybody wants. If I join the last rakat, how should I finish my salah? Do I start from the beginning? Subhanakallahumma, etc. You have to understand these two rules. This is a concept that will sort you all out, I'm telling you. The amount of questions you get about this, if you learn these rules, you'll know. Okay? When you come late for salah, that you've missed a rakat, so you've missed a rakat with the Imam, there's two perspectives. One is the reading, like when we read our Quran and all, Subhanakallahumma and everything, and one is the actions, the physical actions that you do. The reading part, you will start it as if you've just started your salah from the beginning. So let's say you missed, let's say it was Dhuhr salah, 4 rakat salah. You missed 3 rakats. Right? You missed 3. So how many did we have with the Imam? You had 1 with the Imam. Right? So when the Imam said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, we're going to stand up. Okay? So now, in terms of reading, we're going to read as if we've just started. So what do we read first? Subhanakallahumma. Allahu a'udhu, bismillah, alhamdu, surah. Yeah? So in terms of reading, we've just started salah at the beginning. In terms of actions, what rakat are we on? It's our second. Because we did 1 with the Imam, now we were on our second. So now in terms of actions, after the second sajda, what do we have to do? We have to sit for at-tahiyyat. Does that make sense? Now, so that's your 1 rakat by yourself, your second with the Imam. So you do your at-tahiyyat, and you're going to stand up again. Yeah, you're going to stand up again. It's your 3rd rakat with the Imam, but in terms of reading, it's our second rakat. So we have to read Alhamdu and a surah. In terms of reading, we've only done 2 by ourselves, right? So this one has to have a surah with it. Right? But really in the actions, we're on our 3rd rakah. So then we'll go down, then we'll come all the way back up again for our 4th and final one, just surah Fatiha, and then come back to that. So if you remember that rule, it will help you no matter what salah you've joined, no matter what rakat you've joined in. Should I go into sajda or ruku when he says Allahu Akbar or after he finished saying Allahu Akbar? This is a question that comes up a lot as well. So let's say the Imam says Allahu Akbar. Do you immediately say Allahu Akbar with his Allahu Akbar, or do you let him finish and then join in? You have 2 options. You have both options. You can either say Allahu Akbar with him with just a slight delay. You don't want to go before him, that's why. There's a whole chapter in hadith books about mubadaratul imam, going ahead of the imam. You can't do that. You're following the imam, remember. The imam is not following you. You're following the imam. If you're not following the imam, your salah is going to break. Yeah? So you can do it at the same time as the imam, just slight delay so you don't go ahead of him. Right? So let's say at the beginning of salah, when the imam says Allahu Akbar, don't let your Allahu Akbar be before his. Be a tiny bit after him, just slightly. Right? Or the second option is to join him after he's completed going into the position. So when he gets into ruku, then you go into ruku. You can do that as well if you want. Yeah? So both of these options are fine. You can join, as he goes into ruku, you go with him, or let him go first and then you join, that's okay as well. But it shouldn't be a delay unnecessarily though. Don't just stand there. Yeah, just, looking around and stuff. You know the condition of the people behind, especially in the first row. The first row, the first saf is very virtuous saf. And the condition of the people in that saf can have an effect on the imam in terms of concentration, right? In terms of that khushoo as well. So if, for example, somebody has not done wudu properly, or they're not in a complete state of tahara and cleanliness, that can also affect the imam in terms of khushoo and concentration. We have hadith that indicate that as well. Okay, when do you do sajda sahwa? I think we know this anyway. When you miss or delay a wajib act, then you do sajda sahwa. But this is when you're performing salah alone. You won't do it if you're following the imam and you made a mistake of your own. It's only when you're reading salah by yourself. Okay, if I accidentally get up forgetting I should be in tashahhud, is my salah invalidated? If it's first tashahhud, so let's say it's a 4 rakat salah, and it's your second rakat, you didn't sit, you got straight up for your third rakat. Right? What happens? You've missed a wajib, right? So you won't go back down for it. Why not? Qiyam is a farad position. Qiyam, standing, is a farad position. You've got into a farad position. You won't abandon that to go back down to a wajib. Does that make sense? You'd continue, but you've made a mistake. You missed the wajib. So at the end you will do sajda sahwa to make up for that mistake. Now if it was the last qa'dah is what? It's farad. So if you missed the last qa'dah, I did it a few weeks ago, if you remember, in Isha Salah. Got up for the 5th rakat. Yeah, don't know what happened to me that day. But last qa'dah, get up. So I missed the last qa'dah. So now it depends what you do. If you come back down before you've done sajda for the next rakat, you've saved your salah. Right? However, if you were just oblivious, you just continued reading, you did your ruku', still didn't realize, qawma, still didn't realize, and you came into sajda, still didn't realize, what you should do now is, because now you've done 5 full rakats. Can we ever have a 5 rakat salah? What you should do is add another one to make it 6, and then all 6 will become nafil, but you missed your farad. So what do we have to do? Pray your salah. That makes sense? However, if you had got back down into qa'dah, if you saved it, then sajda sahwa is right? Before sajda, you saved it, you came back down into qa'dah, then that's okay. You just got to sajda sahwa. Yes.
So now if you're coming up in the second rakat, you said Allah and you stood up, but you haven't said it yet, but you'll have to go down.
If you're close, as in the second rakat, if you're closer to the sitting position, just sit back down. If you've already stood up, just continue. Yeah.
That still constitutes a mistake because you started in the next rakat. Or you was just saying there, so like let's say you're halfway up.
Yeah, as long as if you're closer to the ground, like your knees have barely left the ground and you sat back down, that wouldn't even constitute a mistake, just continue. But if you got up, you shouldn't go back down, but if somebody did go back down, then sajda sahwa at the end. Because you've delayed that now. I came back down into qa'dah. It's okay because I came back for my qa'dah akhira, which is farad. So I did my farad, but I did it late. So I had to do sajda sahwa at the end to compensate for that mistake.
So you know if you start reciting that 4 rakat, do you still go back down and finish the rakat?
No, you can come back down whenever you remember, even if you start reciting. Yeah.
And that's the case because that 5th rakat is not actually farad.
It's not farad.
Yeah, exactly. Because even though the position is normally farad,
Even though that the position is farad, you've missed the farad. So to come from a farad position to a farad position is fine. If I miss sajda tilawa during Jamaat and I joined in later, do I have to do sajda tilawa when I finish my salah? So if you didn't hear the sajda ayah being recited, fine, no problem. You don't have to do anything. If you heard let's say the imam's reading, he said the ayah, and you just came into the masjid then. So you heard it, but you weren't part of the salah, and you didn't do the sajda with the imam. If you caught the imam in the same rak'ah, so in ruku at least, then that's fine. That ruku of the imam will be considered enough to sort your sajda tilawah out. If you missed that rak'ah completely, after the salah finishes, just do one sajda tilawah by yourself. Does that make sense? So like I said, if you heard the verse but you didn't catch the imam in ruku', you do it yourself after salah. If you caught him in the same rakat, at least in ruku' position, you've got the rakat, right? So that would be fine for you. That would be considered to be enough. I don't know what ayahs are being recited, so what should I do in Salah? In Arabic. Yeah? But like I said before, if in all seriousness, those small surahs, there should be an effort that we learn the translation of them. The tafsir of them is not hard to get hold of. You can download the app of Ibn Kathir, one of the most accepted and famous books of tafsir. And you can just read it on your phone. And it won't take you too long. If we understand these verses, it brings that Khushoo in our Salah. In the Salah, it won't invalidate the Salah. It will just be kind of seen as missed. You've just missed it. There's no expiation for it. It's just missed. You don't have to. No.
On Jummah, you replace the regular protocol with 2 rakat with the Imam. But you still read the Sunnah before and after. Are those Sunnahs, is your need still to read the Sunnah before and after?
Yeah, so the Sunnahs are the same. You know how in Jummah we have the khutbah? So that khutbah essentially is a replacement for two rakats. So usually you have 4 rakat followed of Zuhr. In Jummah you have 2 rakats, but you have the khutbah before it. That's why it's really important that we try and come for the khutbah. A lot of people come after the khutbah. So they'll see, okay, the timetable says 1:30 or 1:25, so I'm going to get there at 1:30, because that's when Salah starts. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be getting there at least by 1:25, so they get the khutbah. It's part of Salah. Yes, at the back. You read Zuhr. No. If you miss the full Jummah Salah with the Imam, read Zuhr Salah, 4 farad of Zuhr. Yes. 4 people, at least. No. No, it'd be better just not to do Jummah, read Zuhr. This was the debate in the time of COVID, that everybody's at home. Is it better to do Zuhr at home, or is it better to do Jummah? There was a difference of opinion between the ulama. Some said that it's better to do Dhuhr because it goes in the spirit of Jummah is everyone coming together. But others said that, at least you got 4 people and you can do Jummah at home if you want. So there was permission there. But if you, nowadays, when everything's open, if you miss Jummah and then you're going to have groups of 4 doing Jummah, it's going to become a joke. So Jummah, you miss it with Dhuhr. And you'll be sinful for missing Jummah for no reason. If it was for no reason. Right? There should be an effort. إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمُعَةِ فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ. Leave your transactions, leave everything, come for Jumu'ah. It's very, very important, come for Jumu'ah.
Just coming back to that question, for example, when
Do you like my smiley face?
Sometimes the Imam might be reciting the last ayat of Surah Baqarah or another surah. If you don't understand the meaning of those,
so
the Imams are not always reading the last
yeah, of course, yeah. So in that case, again, we're doing what we can to attain Khushoo. We do what we have to do. So one is imagining the scenes of Qiyamah. The benefit you have in loud salahs is you focus on the words themselves. Because the Quran is just so beautiful in itself. Even if you don't know what it means. Like, you see all these videos on YouTube, right? People in the streets giving da'wah and they go to non-Muslims and say, hey, listen to this. How does it make you feel? And they say, I feel so peaceful and all that. That's the words of the Quran. It will give you that. If you focus on the words themselves, it will still give you some sort of benefit. It's a dhikrullah in the day, it's the words of Allah. You know in Jannah, one of the best things you have in Jannah is hearing the Quran from Allah Himself. Hearing the Quran from Allah Himself. It's like the best thing that you could ever imagine. Yeah, right.
You're giving the order at which we should do things like at home and at the masjid earlier on. I've previously heard that you should read your sunnah at home.
Okay. So the Prophet said, "La taj'alu buyutakum qubura." Don't make your houses like graveyards, where there's no salah in the graveyard. Right? We don't perform salah in graveyards, right? There's an important point there. There should be an effort to perform salah at home. But there should be an effort for us to read more salah at home as well. So people at home see how salah should be performed. The Prophet ﷺ, his home, imagine Masjid al-Nabawi, the Prophet's house was there, attached to Masjid al-Nabawi. And his house was small. He could stretch out each hand and touch each wall. That's how small his house was, right? If he did that, he'd be touching either wall. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha says that I used to be sleeping and the Prophet would be performing salah. When he would go in sajda, he would tap my leg and I would fold my leg up so he could have space for sajda. Why didn't he just go to the masjid? It's 5 steps away. Walk out his house in the masjid. He's showing that example that sunnah should be performed at home. If you're weak like me though, if I go home, I just forget. And I'll get busy in other things. So it's permissible for me to perform sunnah in the masjid. Because I need to perform my sunnah. If you can perform sunnah at home, that's best. And it's best to do that because there's no one looking at you as well. So there's more sincerity in it. Whereas over here I perform like a long 10-minute salah because everyone's looking at me, thinking, oh, what an amazing salah this guy's reading. Right? But at home there's more sincerity there as well. But it's a good point you brought up. There should be an effort to perform salah at home, sunnah salah. What can be recited after durood? So after Allahumma salli ala, and we read Allahumma inni dhalamtu. The reason why the Hanafis choose Allahumma inni dhalamtu is because the Prophet ﷺ taught that dua to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. It's a hadith of Sahih Muslim. So you can read that dua, and most of us know that dua. If you recited a different dua, that's fine. In fact, if you were to read Allahumma inni dhalamtu and other duas, that's good too. But it has to be in Arabic, and it has to be from the Quran and Sunnah. So it has to be masnoon du'as, and it has to be in Arabic during that time. If you're reading with the Imam, obviously you're not going to get much time. So you only keep to the basics, Allahumma inni dhalamtu, but then you continue with the Imam. If you're reading at home by yourself, you can read however much you want. And you should make an effort to do more du'as. Not wajib, sunnah. But this is chosen because it was taught to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, I've taken the hadith out, but the hadith actually is, Abu Bakr asked the Prophet, teach me a dua for salah. And he teaches him this dua. Right. So it's very important. What du'as can be recited in ruku'? I'm trying to wrap things up because I know I've taken quite a lot of time. What du'as can be recited in ruku'? So Subhana Rabbil Azim, and when we're standing in qiyam, in qawma, in sajda, all of that, what can you read? So in farad salah, the rule is in farad salah, try and stick to the basic ones that the Prophet taught. The usual sunnah du'as, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, Rabbana lakal hamd. They're short, basic. This was the common practice of the Prophet ﷺ. So in farad salah, stick with that. Having said that, the Prophet made other du'as as well. They're on the screen. There are other du'as in the hadith. It's best to leave those du'as for when you're doing salah by yourself. In nafil salah. Right? To go on extra. If someone wanted to read them in farad salah, he can do it, but the imam shouldn't do it. The imam shouldn't do it because it becomes too long for everybody else. So the imam is taught to keep it short and sweet. Right? Keep it short, the basic sunnah du'as, because there's old people, there's weak people, sick people. We have to care for everybody. Keep it short. If you're reading salah alone, read however much you want. It can't be from what they call kalam al-nas. So it can't be from just worldly things. It should be from the Quran and the Sunnah. If that's in salah. If you just wanted to fall into sajda and make some dua outside of a salah, that's fine. That can be in any language as well. So those du'as that I just talked about, they're for nafil salah. When you're reading it by yourself, not farad salah, we leave it. This is the last one. I didn't have time to translate that. If somebody comes late for salah, the imam's in ruku, or the imam's in sajda, and I think somebody mentioned that they come in, they'll start, do ruku, and then slowly walk forward. A Sahabi Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu did that in salah. And the Prophet ﷺ turned to him after salah and said, don't do that again. Right? So what you should do, as over here says, Imam Muhammad says, لا تعجلن بركوع, don't hurry with your ruku', ولا افتتاح, nor with starting your salah, حتى تصل إلى الصف, until you join the saf, وتقوم فيه, and you stand up in the saf, then do it. Then so you come to the row, join with everybody else, and then perform your salah. Another hadith here is, because the only reason someone does that is they think, I'm going to lose rewards, right? So I want to get as much rewards as possible, so I'm going to come. So the Prophet said, when you come for salah, لا تعتوها تسعون, don't rush for salah, عليكم السكينة, relax, just calm down, just walk normally, because every step that you take you're getting a reward, and every other step a sin is being forgiven. So for the moment you leave your house and you're walking, even until you get to the saf, you're still getting rewards. So there's no need to run. In fact, when you run or you rush, you're going to disturb others. So that's other people's khushuu gone. And you're going to be out of breath by the time you get there. If you're like me and you run for 15 seconds, you get out of breath, then you're going to spoil the khushuu of your own salah. So we don't do that. We just walk normally and then join the saf.